Hi, I'm Dan Barrio, training consultant here at Orion. In this webinar, we're going to be taking a look at our two new AI-powered tools, Report Assistant and Query Studio. Now, this portion of the webinar is pre-recorded. Towards the end, I'll be joined live by Louis Giannini, Senior Director of Product Management here at Orion, and we're going to be answering your questions in a live Q&A. That said, we're also going to be in the chat during this webinar. So if you have any questions as we go, please submit your questions in the chat. We also have a few experts from our reporting product team in the chat as well. So if you have questions as the webinar is going along, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We'll highlight some questions to answer in the live Q&A, as well as answer questions that come in at the end live. And if we're not able to get to your question during the webinar, we'll follow up with you after the webinar with answers. We also have some content and resources linked if you click on the Learn More at the top of your page. I highly recommend checking those out. And our most frequently asked question is, will you be able to watch this again? Yes. Via the same link that you used to sign up for this webinar, you'll be able to re-watch this as an on-demand recording. And we highly encourage sharing this with a colleague using the share feature if you find that you'd like to share it with a colleague and so they can watch it. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. We have a couple exciting events coming up. Myself, my counterpart, training consultant Consuelo, as well as all of our great Orion trainers are going to be at Align University along with our Redtail trainers. So if you'd like to learn Orion, Redtail, a bit of both, we're going to be in Minneapolis June 9th and 10th. We highly encourage you checking out the sign up from the QR code or from that link. We'd love to see you there. And if you'd like to learn about Eclipse, our trading platform, join us in Omaha on May 12th for Eclipse University. Our amazing Eclipse trainer, Jake, is going to be hosting the training. You'll be able to get some really in-depth training on Eclipse and be able to ask questions directly and get answers from our Eclipse expert, Jake. A little disclaimer before we start, we're going to look at a couple different pieces of functionality. As I mentioned, Query Studio and the Report Assistant. If you don't currently have access to this functionality, we are going to mention what privileges need to be enabled for you or for your role during the webinar, but you'll need to reach out to the Manage Users admin at your firm to enable that for you as a user. So if you see something that you currently don't have access to, that's not a call to Orion. That would be reaching out to the Manage Users admin at your firm, and that's typically the person that would handle if you need to reset your password, for example. So what are you going to learn about in this webinar? Well, first we're going to start out with getting an understanding of what we mean by a query. What is a query? Generally, we have queries, which are for returning information internally about your database, and we have reports, which are client-facing reports. Then we'll look at Query Studio overall, how to build a query using natural language with the AI chat, and then go deeper into editing and sharing queries. Then we'll get a look at Report Assistant, how it can help you when you're building custom reports to change content on your custom reports, add and edit content. Then we'll come back for a live Q&A where we'll answer your questions that have come up during the webinar live and also any questions that come up live at the end. So let's start out by getting a better understanding of what we mean by a query. Well, like the name suggests, like the word suggests, it's a question. It's a question that you're asking about your database to get answers to a specific question or type of information. For example, you might be wondering how much cash is in my client accounts, or were there any accounts that went to zero during a particular period, or do I have any client households in my system that currently need their addresses updated. All of those are the types of information that you might be used to looking for and finding manually in the system. With a query, you can pull together answers to that question without having to manually find and organize that data. Queries in Orion can be exported to Excel, so you can do further analysis in Excel. When we're talking about reports, when we say a report, what we generally mean is a client-facing report. So that would be like a client statement or performance report that you would give to a client. Now, we're going to get an overview of Query Studio. We'll start with how to build a query, and then we'll get a look at what other functionality you have. But before we do that, getting a better understanding of what Query Studio is it's not just a place to find queries, it's a place where you can build queries and edit and customize queries. So you can, for example, ask the AI chat a question. In this case, we're showing, show me active households, households in the system or clients that have active households that have canceled accounts. You can ask that as a question, and Query Studio will put together a query. It's a series of columns in a spreadsheet view that provides data to answer that questions. You can then go further and edit that information to rename columns, add columns. You can use filters to filter in or out data. So essentially you start by asking a question. Query Studio turns that into a query, and then you can either run that query or share that query as is, or you can edit and adjust it to further meet your needs. Before we dive in and look at building queries, there are some privileges that you'll need to have enabled so that you can use Query Studio. Now, a very big caveat to start off with is to use Query Studio, you do need to be set up in your Orion database as what we call an advisor level user. That's the type of user that can see all clients in the database. If you are instead set up as a representative level user, which means you can only see your book of business or your clients, you won't be able to use Query Studio. You can work with an advisor level user at your firm and they can build and run a query with Query Studio. But again, you'll need to be an advisor level user to use Query Studio. The first time you launch it, you'll see a pop-up that is going to show a quick reference to the same privileges that I'm showing on this slide, but this slide is also a good reference for the two privileges that need to be enabled for either you individually as an advisor level user or for your broader role, which any other advisor level users are assigned in the system. So if you're part of an ops team, for example, at your firm, and you're all set up as advisor level users, by enabling these privileges, you'll have access to both Query Studio and the ability to build, use, edit, and share queries in it. So now let's look at creating a simple query in Query Studio. I'm going to go over to a demo database that we're going to be using for this training. I have my app doc here on my left, which is where I normally interact with the different apps in Orion. And Query Studio I have saved here as an app in my favorites section. Now you can find all apps that you have access to by expanding this More section. And then if you wanted to add an app to the top, you can just hover over the star next to its name and it's going to add it to the top. Now your list of apps will likely look different than mine because that's unique to you as a user and to which apps your managed user has given you access to. You'll notice that we also have another app called Query. This is now our legacy query app, which you can still utilize, and it is a place where you can go and find pre-built queries, but we're going to be working out of Query Studio primarily today. Now let's create a simple query that returns which of my clients don't have addresses entered yet. And if you haven't run queries before, or explored that process, you might be used to finding that information manually, and it might look something like this. You might come over to the Portfolio Audit app and click on Households, and here you can see your entire book of all of your clients in your database, and you'll notice that there isn't an address column shown by default, so you would have to come over to the right and explore your hidden columns and find your address columns. So there's a lot of manual work involved here, and then you still have to kind of visually see which ones don't have addresses entered. So a lot of manual work here. What we're going to do is we're going to build a query by launching Query Studio,